Good morning. It is September 25th, 2023. We're doing the New York Times Daily Newsletter. Today's propagandists are German Lopez and Lauren Jackson. We're covering a deal to end the Hollywood writers' strike, as well as the South China Sea abortions in Mexico, and Taylor Swift. So this is a slow news day. Who cares about? I'll read it, but all right. 146 days on strike. Woo. The writer's strike has frozen Hollywood for months. Yay, no crappy movies. Studios delayed the production of TV shows and movies, including fan favorites like Stranger Things and the new Star Wars films. They didn't ruin more Star Wars. Wow. Organizers postponed the Emmys. Talk show hosts went on hiatus, which was hilarious. But the strike now seems poised to end. Writers and studios have reached a tentative deal. The Writers Guild of Association announced yesterday. WGA members had demanded higher pay, greater royalties, better working conditions, and protections against artificial intelligence. The tentative deal includes most of what the writers sought. In the coming days, union members will vote on whether to approve the agreement. We can say with great pride that this deal is exceptional, with meaningful gains and protections for writers in every sector of the membership, the WGA negotiating committee told union members yesterday. The studios, notably, were not celebrating how the deal was done. Negotiations had stalled for months. They regained momentum last week when studio executives, including Disney's powerful chief executive Bob Iger, came to the table. After 5 days, both sides reached an agreement. The use of AI was the final sticking point. The writers didn't want studios to use their work to teach chatbots how to write, feeding AI old scripts so the chatbots could generate writing in a similar style. That's too late. It's already done. The writers also worried that studios would ask chatbots to rewrite or refine the first drafts of their work for scenes or whole shows. That's the nightmare scenario, said John August, who is on the Writers Guild negotiating committee. The studios had initially said that too much was unknown about the technology and that the Guild would need to wait to discuss its future contract negotiations. But over the weekend, the studios proposed a few paragraphs to be inserted into the new contract that addressed the writers' concern about AI and old scripts. The two sides spent several hours negotiating the language of the final night of talks. I think it's great that we're making sure that all of the people that make obscene amounts of money peddling woke garbage films that are just propaganda, we're making sure that they get taken care of. Meanwhile, AI is putting out of business people who have, families to support and are part of communities and aren't trying to subvert America. But, let's make sure that the Hollywood writers get plenty of money to write bad films. An ongoing shutdown at the end of the writers' strike would not mean that the Hollywood is still back to full working order. A separate actors' strike led by SAG-AFTRA, who cares, is continuing. The actors wanted 2% of the total revenue generated by streaming shows, something that studios have said is a non-starter. There are no talks scheduled between the two sides. The combination of writers and actor strikes had halted work on shows like Yellowstone and movies like the next installment of Mission Impossible. More than 100,000 behind-the-scenes staff, like camera operators and makeup artists, are still out of work. The actor strike has also hindered marketing by preventing union members from going on press tours. With writers most likely headed back to work, daytime and late-night talk show hosts like Stephen Colbert, Jimmy Fallon, and Jennifer Hudson could soon return to the air. Oh, who cares? They're all terrible. They all have horrible ratings for a reason. Earlier this month, some talk show hosts, including Drew Barrymore and Bill Maher, announced they would bypass the writer's strike and restart production of their talk shows. After a fierce backlash from their staffs and audience, they delayed production once again. The Writers Guild suspended picketing, but encouraged members to join the striking actors' picket lines, which will begin again tomorrow. The stock prices for Disney, Warner Brothers, Discovery, and Paramount taken a hit during the strikes. Hollywood writers thanked their negotiation on social media. "You saved our profession," one wrote. Hundreds of filmmakers attending an awards gala cheered when the deal was announced from the stage, the Hollywood Writer reports. Who cares? Just, who cares? In the South China Sea, Times journalists saw China's growing militarization and territorial ambitions in the contested waters. Emmanuel Macron, France's president, plans to withdraw troops from Niger by the end of the year after weeks of escalating tensions with the nation's new military leaders. It's interesting that they're no longer calling it a coup. I mean, it was a coup, but yeah, the people are supporting it, so it's now the people's government. Refugees are crossing into Armenia from Nagorno-Karabakh. I don't know how to pronounce that. An Armenian enclave that was returned to Azerbaijan's control in a military offensive last week. The diplomatic crisis between India and Canada over the killing of a separatist in British Columbia has left many Indians with plans to travel for work and education in limbo. The Greek economy is growing at twice the Eurozone average, a decade after the country's financial crisis shuttered hundreds of thousands of businesses. The war in Ukraine. Russia struck the port of Odessa in the first large attack since Ukraine started testing a new route to ship grain across the Black Sea, and probably in retaliation for the Storm Shadow strikes. Finland raced to join NATO after its neighbor Russia invaded Ukraine. Joining the alliance has been expensive and complicated. Politics. More than a year after Roe versus Wade was overturned, American women are crossing the border into Mexico to seek abortions. Of course, why not? Anything to destroy life. Why not? Nikki Haley and Vivek Ramaswamy, hardline positions on issues like race and identity, are frustrating some Indian Americans. They don't have hardline positions. That's just propaganda. As the criminal case against Donald Trump moves forward, law enforcement officials have warned about potential for violence by his supporters. It's the left that's violent. You're the ones that rioted for 9 months straight. The right takes selfies during their riots. Let's see. An archaeologist found a 3,000-year-old arrow in Norway. It is among thousands of artifacts emerging as climate change thaws permafrost and glaciers. Whatever. Many of the world's largest food companies have not made progress on their emission reduction goals. Some, like McDonald's, have reported rising levels. Hot water cherries and drought-resistant melons meet the crops that could change how we eat in a warming world. They're fine. Plants like warm weather. They don't mind no warmth, no winter. They would actually have no problem with it whatsoever. It's not going to happen. The planet's not warming up at a significant level. It's warming slightly, but it's still not nearly as hot as it was in the 1930s. Let's see. A NASA spacecraft returned to Earth after 7 years. It carried material from a carbon-rich asteroid that could reveal clues about the origins of our solar system. A few U.S. hospitals have resorted to restored mask mandates as corona infections rise. Healthcare workers and public health experts are divided. That's because they don't do anything. That's been proven over and over. The FBI opened a civil rights case investigation into allegations that police officers in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, abused and humiliated detainees in an unmarked torture warehouse. So that's kind of like Chicago's black sites, which means that nothing's going to happen here because we live in a corrupt country. This is the thing that's great. Nobody's protesting about that. When music educators focus on fun instead of perfection, they inspire children to love music. Let's see. Barely a mention of Robert Menendez's indictments. Senior subway surfing. Some retired people in Korea spend their days riding the trains. I can see that. Patterned hair to hoodies. How dress in the Senate has evolved. Yeah, well, it's the hoodies is a really inappropriate thing. The fact that we're lowering the standard for Fetterman so he can walk around and look like a slob is pathetic. He can wear a collared shirt and slacks. Wearing shorts and a hoodie to the Senate is a slap in the face to all Americans and all of his constituents. He doesn't care. The pastry is political. Mooncakes, dense Chinese pastries are being used in protests. Let's see. Steelers beat the Raiders. Who cares? NFL. Women are increasingly taking on roles as scouts and assistant coaches. They have formed support systems to navigate male-dominated world, and the NFL ratings are going down for a reason. Construction has not yet begun on the Smithsonian's National Museum of the American Latino, but a political fight is already boiling over how the museum will present its material. Conservative commentators blasted its first preview exhibition, accusing it of putting a Marxist bent on history, which I'm sure it does because the left does that with everything. And a group of Latino Republican congressmen led a vote to eliminate the museum's funding. So there you go. I mean, when it's the Latinos saying don't do it, the outcry led the museum's director to replace a planned exhibition on civil rights with one about salsa music, to the dismay of some Latino scholars. I doubt it, because they're just like people who are Latinas, they do not like being called Latinx. That is offensive to them. And just like, there's a reason why Latinos are skewing more to the right. It's because they don't abort their kids. They're mostly Catholic and they don't like abortion. Let's see. Usher will headline the 2024 halftime show. Taylor Swift attended a Chiefs game, sat with a tight end, fueling rumors they are dating. Woo. Okay, this day in history. On September 25th, 1957, 9 black students who'd been forced to withdraw from Central High School in Little Rock, Arkansas because of unruly white crowds were escorted by to class by members of the U.S. Army's 101st Airborne Division. In 1513, Spanish explorer Vasco Nunez de Balboa crossed the Isthmus of Panama and sighted the Pacific Ocean. In 1789, the first United States Congress adopted 12 amendments to the Constitution and sent them to the states for ratification. 10 of the amendments became the Bill of Rights. In 1919, President Woodrow Wilson collapsed after a speech in Pueblo, Colorado, during a national speaking tour in support of the Treaty of Versailles. In 1956, the first transatlantic telephone cable officially went into service with a three-way ceremonial call between New York, Ottawa, and London. In 1964, the sitcom Gomer Pyle, USMC, starring Jim Nabors, premiered on CBS. In 1978, 144 people were killed when a Pacific Southwest Airlines Boeing 727 and a private plane collided over San Diego. In 1981, Sandra Day O'Connor was sworn in as the first female justice on the Supreme Court. In 1992, NASA's Mars orbiter blasted off on a $980 million mission to the Red Planet. The probe disappeared just before entering Martian orbit on August 1993. In 1994, Russian President Boris Yeltsin began a 5-day swing through the United States, hoping to encourage American investment in his country's struggling economy. In 2012, President Barack Obama, speaking at the UN General Assembly, pledged U.S. support for Syria, trying to oust President Bashar al-Assad, calling him a, quote, dictator who massacres his own people. That turned out to be a flat-out lie. We actually supported a bunch of terrorists in Israel, or in Syria, and then the Russians ended up bombing them, and then Trump came in and just went away like that. It's kind of funny how that worked out. Let's see. In 2013, skipper Jimmy Spithill and Oracle Team USA won the America's Cup with one of the greatest comebacks in sports history, speeding past Dean Barker and Emirates Team New Zealand in the winner take-all race 19 on San Francisco Bay. Okay. 2016, golf legend Arnold Palmer died at 87. In 2017, former Congressman Anthony Weiner was sentenced to 21 months behind bars for illicit online contact with a 15-year-old girl, which, shows two-tiered system of justice because he should have been gone for a lot longer than that. He had child porn on his computer, too. That's supposed to be decades in prison. In 2018, Bill Cosby was sentenced to 3 to 10 years in prison for drugging and molesting a woman in his suburban Philadelphia home. After serving nearly 3 years, Cosby went free in June 2021 after the Pennsylvania Supreme Court overturned his conviction, which is a travesty of justice, but whatever. Happy Monday.